You want to know what happens when dignity gets murdered in front of 200 witnesses, when a man decides that humiliation is a spectator sport, when someone takes the most intimate betrayal and turns it into prime-time entertainment. Let me tell you about the night Elara Monroe learned that love is a weapon, and some people are assassins. Picture this, a rooftop. Yeah, not just any rooftop, a luxury venue in the heart of the city where people who've never known hunger come to celebrate excess. Crystal chandeliers casting golden light across marble floors so polished you could see your reflection crying back at you. 200 guests dressed in clothes that cost more than most people's rent. Media cameras positioned strategically because when rich people celebrate, they need witnesses. They need proof that they matter. This was supposed to be an engagement gala. You know the kind. Champagne fountains, string quartets playing Vivaldi, white roses imported from Ecuador because local flowers aren't good enough for people who measure worth in brand names and bank accounts. Elara Monroe wore a white gown, form-fitting, elegant. The kind of dress that says, "I belong here," even when you're screaming inside that you don't. Her hair was perfect, makeup immaculate. Well, she smiled for the cameras because that's what you do when you're about to marry Damian Cole, a man whose family name opens doors and whose money closes mouths. She thought she was safe. She thought after 3 years together, after moving into his penthouse, after abandoning her architectural career because he said her dreams were cute but impractical, after enduring his mother's comments about her background, after trying, God, how she tried, to get pregnant because he wanted an heir more than he wanted a partner. She thought she had earned security. She was wrong, because Damian Cole grabbed that microphone, right there, in front of everyone. And you know what he did? He detonated her entire existence with a smile on his face. "I have an announcement to make." The room went quiet. Guests turned. Cameras zoomed. Elara's heart probably thought this was the moment, the romantic declaration, and the public affirmation of love. Poor, stupid heart. "I'm ending this engagement." 6 words. That's all it took. 6 words to watch someone's face collapse in real time, to see hope drain from eyes that had been shining seconds before, to witness the exact moment someone realizes they've been the punchline of a joke they didn't know was being told. But Damian wasn't done. Oh no. Because ending the engagement wasn't enough. Humiliation needs details. Cruelty needs specificity. And Elara is infertile. He said it like he was discussing the weather, like he was announcing a menu change, casual, matter of fact, like her medical condition was public information, like her pain was community property, like her body's private struggle was entertainment for champagne-drunk socialites who would gossip about this for months. And still, he wasn't done. "This is Sarah, my assistant. She's pregnant with my child." A woman stepped forward, young, pretty, visibly pregnant, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Elara's entire education, smiling, actually smiling. Because when you're complicit in someone's destruction, why not enjoy the show? Damian put his hand on Sarah's stomach, possessive, proud. "I deserve a legacy. I deserve children who will carry my name. Elara can't give me that. I deserve. As if love is a transaction, as if partnership is a business contract with performance metrics, and as if a woman's worth is measured in her reproductive capacity, as if 3 years of her life, her sacrifices, her dreams deferred, her identity erased, meant nothing because her body couldn't do what his entitled ass demanded. The room erupted, not with outrage. Oh no. With whispers, with gasps, with the collective sound of 200 people enjoying someone else's nightmare. Phones came out. Of course phones came out. Because tragedy isn't real unless it's recorded. And pain isn't valid unless it's viral. Elara stood there, frozen. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers, crystal shattering against marble, the sound cutting through the murmurs like a gunshot. Her engagement ring, 3 carats, princess cut, bought with money that was supposed to represent forever. She looked down at it. She pulled it off her finger. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just removed it. Like removing a lie, like shedding a costume. It fell, bounced, once, or rolled across the marble floor until it stopped at someone's Louboutin heel. Nobody moved to pick it up. Nobody moved to help her. They just watched. Phones recording, cameras flashing, watching a woman die inside while wearing a white dress at her own execution. That's when the rage hits me every time I tell this story. Not sadness, rage. Because this is what they do, isn't it? Powerful men. They build you up just high enough that the fall will shatter every bone in your body. They make you dependent. They isolate you. They convince you that your worth is tied to their approval. Then they pull the floor out from under you and act surprised when you can't fly. Damien stood there looking pleased with himself, like he'd just given a TED Talk, like he'd made a difficult but necessary decision, like he was the victim of circumstance rather than the architect of cruelty. Who the hell are you? Those were Damien's words, confused, irritated. All because someone was walking toward him. Someone who wasn't supposed to interrupt his perfectly orchestrated show. A man in a dark charcoal suit. No tie. Calculated casualness that costs more than formal wear. He'd been standing at the edge of the room this whole time, watching, silent. His name was Lucian Vale, and he was about to rewrite the power dynamics of that entire goddamn room. He walked forward. Not rushed, because power doesn't rush. Not angry, because rage that shows is rage that's wasted. Just controlled, deliberate. Each step echoing against marble like a countdown to something Damien couldn't yet comprehend. "Who the hell are you?" Damien repeated, his voice rising. That panic you hear when someone realizes the script isn't going as planned. Lucian stopped, looked at Damien with the kind of expression you give insects before you step on them. The reason your bank hasn't foreclosed on you. Silence. Complete. Absolute. On the kind of silence that precedes earthquakes. You could see Damien's face change, confusion, then recognition, then fear dressed up as bravado. "You think you can threaten me? At my own event? I'll have security." "Your empire," Lucian interrupted, his voice so calm it was almost gentle, "is built on leveraged debt. Every building, every investment, every asset you claim to own is collateral for loans that I control through the private equity firm that's been financing your delusions of grandeur for the past 5 years. Damien's mouth opened, closed, opened again, like a fish yanked from water and suddenly remembering it can't breathe air. Every single loan is callable. 4 words. Dropped like bombs, each one landing with the precision of someone who'd done the math and knew exactly where the structural weaknesses were. "And you wouldn't dare try me." 2 words, delivered with the kind of certainty that comes from actually having power rather than just performing it. And here's the thing about bullies. Here's the thing about men like Damien Cole who've spent their entire lives confusing money with merit, inheritance with intelligence. The moment they meet someone with actual leverage, they collapse. They fold. They reveal themselves as the insecure. Or fragile little boys they've always been underneath the bespoke suits and aggressive posturing. Damien went pale, actually pale, because he just realized he'd been playing checkers while someone else owned the board. Lucian turned, away from Damien, dismissing him like the irrelevant variable he'd just become. He looked at Elara, She was still standing there, makeup beginning to run, breathing shallow, looking like she couldn't decide whether to scream or disappear or both. You don't belong in a room that applauds your humiliation. His voice was different now, softer, not gentle. Lucian Vale wasn't gentle, but human. Like he was talking to a person rather than delivering a corporate restructuring announcement. He offered his hand, not demanding, not assuming, just offering. Elara stared at it, at him, at the hand extended toward her by a stranger, while her ex-fiancé stood frozen and 200 witnesses held their breath and cameras kept recording because this was better than any scripted drama they'd ever paid to see. She hesitated. Of course she hesitated, because taking that hand meant something, meant accepting rescue, meant trusting a stranger, meant walking away from the ashes of her old life without knowing where she'd land. But here's what I love about this moment. And here's what makes my chest hurt every single time. She took it. Not because she was weak, not because she needed saving, but because standing there bleeding while everyone watched wasn't dignity. It was just prolonged suffering. She placed her hand in his fingers closed around hers, steady, warm, real. They walked, past Damien, past Sarah with her pregnant belly and her complicit smile, past the guests who'd been so eager to watch the show, past the cameras, so past the roses and the champagne and the chandeliers and every glittering symbol of a world that had just revealed itself as hollow. The crowd parted. Because that's what crowds do when real power moves through them. They scattered like roaches when the light turns on. Every phone was up. Every camera was recording. But for once, the woman wasn't the victim in the frame. She was walking out, head high, hand held by someone who just demonstrated that cruelty has consequences, and that bullies can be checked, that humiliation can be interrupted. They walked out of that building and into the night, and I want you to understand something. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't a fairy tale. This wasn't some romantic gesture wrapped in chivalry. This was witnessing. Lucian Vale saw what everyone else watched, but he did something about it. And sometimes that's the difference between being human and being a bystander with a camera phone. But this story is about to get so much deeper than revenge, because rescue is easy. It's clean. It's a single action with a clear beginning and end. What came next? That's where pain lives. That's where real love reveals itself. That's where you learn that choosing someone isn't about dramatic gestures in ballrooms. It's about staying when they start to forget your name. If you think dignity should never be negotiated, remember this moment. Because what happened outside that building, in the quiet after the explosion, is where the real story begins. Outside. Cool air, city lights, the sound of traffic replacing string quartets. Elara's breathing was still unsteady. Her hand was still in Lucien's, but she pulled away the moment they reached the sidewalk. Created distance, because proximity to kindness when you're used to cruelty can feel like another trap. "Why did you help me?" Her voice cracked. So anger and confusion and something that might have been hope, but was too scared to call itself that. Lucian looked at her, really looked. Not the way Damien looked, assessing, calculating, measuring worth, just seeing. Because nobody else did. 5 words, simple, devastating, true. He offered his driver, a black car already pulling up. Professional, discreet, safe. She refused. "I can get home on my own." Pride. The only thing she had left. The only thing Damien hadn't managed to take. So Lucian could have insisted, could have played savior, could have turned rescue into obligation. He didn't. I respect that. Then he did something that matters more than grand gestures. He assigned security anyway. Not obviously, not intrusively. But a car followed her home at a distance, made sure she got inside safely, made sure the media vultures already gathering outside her building didn't swarm, made sure she had space to fall apart in private the way everyone deserves when their life implodes. That's power that actually gives a damn. That's intervention that respects agency. That's help that doesn't demand gratitude. By morning, it was viral. Because of course it was. Hashtag mysterious investor. Saves bride hashtags trending. News segments, think pieces. Everyone with an internet connection suddenly had opinions about Elara Monroe, a woman they didn't know, whose pain they couldn't comprehend, some whose story they consumed like content. The narrative split predictably. Half the internet made Lucian a hero, the other half made him a villain. Because nuance is dead and everything must be reduced to team selections. Damien was on CNN by noon, claiming assault, claiming business interference, claiming victim status with the audacity of someone who'd literally weaponized a microphone against his fiancée 12 hours earlier. That man had no right to threaten my livelihood, Damien said, so looking earnest and wounded. This is about a business disagreement, not about Elara. The anchor, to their credit, wasn't buying it. But you publicly humiliated your fiancé. You revealed private medical information. You introduced your pregnant assistant as, "That's my personal life. That has nothing to do with business." The delusion. The absolute delusion of men who think they can compartmentalize cruelty. Like hurting someone in a ballroom doesn't count because it wasn't in a boardroom. Why Lucian didn't go on television, didn't release statements, didn't engage in the circus. Instead, he made one phone call to his legal team. Full financial review, every loan, every line of credit, by the book, no exceptions. Not revenge, correction. There's a difference. See, Damien had been riding on reputation and connections for years. His company was smoke and mirrors held together by his family name and some very creative accounting, to the kind of creative accounting that works fine until someone actually looks at the numbers. Lucian looked, and what he found was exactly what he expected. Damien Cole Enterprises was a house of cards in a windstorm, and all it needed was one person to stop pretending the emperor was wearing clothes. The financial review wasn't personal, it was procedural. But when you've been operating in gray areas and suddenly someone applies actual scrutiny, that's when gray becomes black and white very quickly. Within a week, Damien was facing investigations, SEC inquiries, investor lawsuits, all the consequences he'd been avoiding through charm and connections suddenly landing at once. And Elara? She was trying to rebuild a life from ashes while the world watched. The text came 3 days after the gala. Unknown number. "How are you holding up?" She stared at it. Debated deleting. Debated blocking. Debated throwing her phone into the river and becoming a hermit. She responded, "Who is this?" "The man who offered you his hand. I should have given you my name properly, Lucian Vale. And before you ask, I'm not checking on you because I expect gratitude. I'm checking because you're human and humans shouldn't have to process trauma alone. Honest, direct, no games." It was so foreign compared to 3 years with Damien that it almost felt suspicious. "Oh, I'm processing." Processing is better than pretending it didn't happen. The entire internet watched it happen. Pretending isn't an option. Then process publicly and let them watch you rebuild, or process privately and tell them to fuck off. Either is valid. She almost smiled. Almost. "I'm not good at telling people to fuck off." Learn. It's a valuable life skill. The texts continued. Not daily, not demanding, just present. Like someone checking in on a friend. And except they weren't friends. They were strangers connected by one moment of intervention. But slowly, painfully, tentatively, slowly, they became something else. He asked about her career, the architectural career she'd abandoned. "Why did you stop designing?" Damien said it was impractical. that I should focus on being his partner, supporting his vision. Even typing it out, she could feel the rage building. At him, at herself, at how easily she'd folded. And his vision of you supporting him while you disappeared? That vision? Yes, that one. Fuck that vision. What would you design right now if nothing was stopping you? Nobody had asked her that in 3 years. A community center, mixed use, sustainable materials, affordable housing on top, public space at ground level, something that actually helps people instead of just looking impressive in magazines. So, design it. I don't have clients, or a firm, or credibility. And I walked away from the field. I'm starting from zero. Zero is better than negative, and you're not at zero. You have training. You have vision. You have experience. You just need to remember you had all that before Damien convinced you it didn't matter. She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons it was impossible. But something in his certainty made her pause. I'll think about it. Don't think. Do. Thinking is how dreams die quietly. Doing is how you prove everyone wrong. She started sketching again, late at night when she couldn't sleep, when the apartment felt too quiet and too loud at the same time, when social media was a minefield of opinions about her life and she needed something that was just hers. She sketched the community center, then she sketched a renovation project for an old theater in her neighborhood, then she sketched a sustainable housing complex. She posted them. Not on her personal account. She'd deleted that after the 1,000th message calling her either a victim or a gold digger. But she created a new account. Just architecture, just designs. No context, no story. People noticed. Not immediately, but slowly. Architecture blogs picked up her work. Design communities shared her concepts. Nobody knew who she was. They just knew the work was good. Anonymous success tastes different than famous failure. When it tastes like maybe you actually have value beyond the narrative people built around you. Lucian showed up at a coffee shop she'd mentioned once, not stalking. She'd posted a photo of her laptop and sketchbook with the coffee shop's logo visible in the background. He texted first, "I'm in your neighborhood. Coffee?" She could have said no. Part of her wanted to, because accepting kindness from strangers who'd witnessed your destruction felt dangerous. But she said yes. He was already there when she arrived, reading the newspaper. Actual physical newspaper, because apparently some people still do that. He looked up when she walked in, smiled. Not the performative smile Damien used, just a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "You look better than you did on a rooftop." That's a low bar. Fair point. They talked about architecture, about her designs, about the possibility of starting her own firm. He didn't offer to fund her, didn't offer connections, and didn't try to fix her problems. He just listened, asked questions, challenged assumptions. "Why do you think you need permission to start?" "Because I failed before." "You didn't fail. You were convinced to stop. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Failure is trying and not succeeding. You succeeded in school. You had job offers. You had talent. You just had a partner who was threatened by your potential and convinced you to shrink. That's not failure. That's strategic sabotage." The anger in his voice surprised her. Not directed at her, directed at the system, at the pattern, at every man who'd ever convinced a capable woman that she was the problem. "You sound like you've seen this before." "I have. Too many times. Talented people convinced by insecure partners that their dreams are inconvenient. And then when those partnerships end, they're left thinking they failed when really they were just trapped by someone else's fear." "Who hurt you?" she asked, and immediately regretted the question because it was too personal, too probing, "My sister. Her husband convinced her to quit medical school, said doctors don't have time for family. She believed him. 20 years later, he left her for someone younger. She never went back to medicine. Says she's too old now. She's 53. She could have saved lives. Instead, she saves regrets. The pain in his voice was real, old, the kind of pain that comes from watching someone you love destroy themselves slowly in the name of love. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Use it. Build something that doesn't collapse under pressure. Build something that would make every man like Damien and every man like my former brother-in-law look at what you created and realize they couldn't dim your light, no matter how hard they tried. She felt something shift. Not healing, that takes time, but recognition, solidarity, the understanding that her story wasn't unique but that didn't make it less valid. I'm going to start my firm. Good. I'm terrified. Also good. Terror means it matters. Over the next months, they kept meeting. Coffee shops, park benches, construction sites where she was consulting on small projects. He'd show up unannounced, but never intrusively, always with an excuse, always giving her space to refuse. And he brought her portfolio to an investor meeting without telling her. One of his colleagues was developing a sustainable housing project, needed an architect. Lucian showed him Elara's work. She got the call the next day. When she confronted him about it, he shrugged. I showed him good work. What he did with it was his choice. You manipulated the situation. I created an opportunity. You earned it. Don't confuse networking with charity. The project was small, but it was real. And then it was hers. Her first independent commission since before Damien. She worked on it like her life depended on it. Maybe it did. The client loved it. Hired her for 2 more projects. Word spread. Elara Monroe wasn't the humiliated fiancée anymore. She was the architect with the innovative, sustainable designs. She rented office space, hired an assistant, registered her firm officially, Monroe Design Studio, her name, her vision. So built from scratch in spite and sleepless nights and coffee shop conversations with a man who believed in her before she believed in herself. But here's where the story breaks your heart. Here's where the fairy tale starts showing cracks. Because nothing this good comes without cost. And Lucian Vale was paying a price he hadn't told anyone about. It started with small things. His hand would tremble when he reached for his coffee. Just for a second. He'd play it off. Blame caffeine. Blame stress. Migraines that left him pale and silent, gripping the table edge until his knuckles went white. Once, during a presentation, he lost his train of thought mid-sentence. Stood there staring at his notes like they were written in a language he didn't recognize. Recovered. Continued. But Elara saw. She saw the fear flash across his face before the mask went back up. Are you okay? She asked later. Fine. Long day. Lucian. I'm fine, Elara. The conversation ended. But her concern didn't. He had a degenerative neurological condition. Early stage. Progressive. Unpredictable. He'd been diagnosed 2 years before he walked into that gala. Before he saw a woman being destroyed and decided to do something about it. Before he started texting a stranger about architecture and dreams and rebuilding. The doctors had given him a timeline. 5 to 7 years before severe symptoms. 10 years before significant cognitive decline. Not death, but loss of self. A loss of memory. Loss of the sharp, brilliant mind that made him who he was. He'd told himself he'd live those years alone. That loving someone when you're disappearing is cruelty. That partnership requires a future, and his future was a slow fade to blank. Then he saw Elara on that rooftop, saw someone being erased in real time, saw courage in her eyes even as tears started falling, saw someone who deserved better than what life had handed her. He told himself he was helping, just helping. Intervention without involvement, support without strings. He was lying to himself. because somewhere between coffee shop conversations and construction site visits and watching her sketch community centers at 3 in the morning, he'd fallen in love with her, and he hated himself for it. She created a list, not a bucket list, something more intentional, more defiant. Reclaim list, she called it. Open my own design firm, check mark buy property in my name, speak at a conference, confront my past. Fall in love without fear. She showed it to Lucian one evening. They were at his place, a minimalist apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He'd cooked dinner. Actual dinner, not takeout. Pasta with vegetables and wine and conversation that felt dangerously close to domesticity. "What's this?" he asked, looking at the list on her phone. "Things I'm taking back. Things Damien convinced me I didn't deserve or couldn't do." "You've already done number 1. "I know." It felt good to check it off. "What's next?" "Property. I've been looking at a small commercial building, mixed use. I could live upstairs, have my studio on the ground floor. It's more than I can afford comfortably, but buy it." "I can't just—" "Yes, you can. You're an architect with a growing firm and successful projects. You're a good investment. Banks give loans to good investments. Buy the building, Elara. Put your name on the deed. Own something that nobody can take from you." She did. She bought it. Signed her name on papers that made her a property owner. Monroe was on the mailbox, on the deed, in permanent ink on documents that proved she existed beyond someone else's narrative. Number 2, checkmark speaking at a conference came next. A design symposium invited her to present her sustainable housing project. She almost declined. Imposter syndrome is loud when you're rebuilding from public humiliation, Lucian convinced her. "When you know what's more powerful than Damien calling you inadequate? You standing on a stage talking about your work while he's dealing with SEC investigations." She presented. Her hands shook. Her voice wavered. But she talked about community-centered design and sustainable materials and architecture that serves people instead of egos. The audience stood up, applauded. She'd forgotten what validation felt like when it's earned rather than performed. And number 3, checkmark. Confronting her past meant different things. She called old friends she'd lost touch with during the Damien years, apologized for disappearing. Most understood. Some didn't. She accepted both outcomes. She wrote a letter to Damien, never sent it. But writing it, cataloging everything he'd taken, everything she'd given, everything she'd lost, that was catharsis. She burned it, watched her words turn to ash, and let the smoke carry away 3 years of trying to be small enough to fit someone else's vision. Number 4, checkmark. Number 5 was still unchecked. Fall in love without fear. The fear part was the problem, because she was falling in love with Lucian. She knew it. He probably knew it. But neither of them said it. Why? Because falling in love with your rescuer feels cliché. Because mixing gratitude with romance feels unstable. Because she was still healing, and he was still helping. And where do you draw the line between support and something more? Also, there was something else. Something she couldn't name but could feel. The way he'd pull away sometimes. The way he'd get distant when conversations turned toward future plans. The way he avoided talking about anything beyond the next few months. She told herself he was busy, that he had his own life, that not everything was about her. She was wrong. On her first major architectural award came a year and a half after the gala. Young Architect of the Year from a prestigious design institute, for her community center project, the one she'd sketch late at night when she was trying to remember who she was before Damien. They'd actually built it. Her design, real materials, real people using the space, children playing in areas she'd planned, families accessing affordable housing she'd created, the community members gathering in public spaces she'd imagined. The awards ceremony was formal, black tie, nothing like the rooftop gala, but similar enough to trigger memories. She wore a different dress, Red this time, bold, unapologetic, the opposite of white innocence. She'd invited Lucian. He sat in the audience. Third row, charcoal suit, no tie. Same as always, looking proud in a way that made her chest ache. When they called her name, she walked to the stage, took the award, his heavy glass and metal shaped like blueprints overlapping. She was supposed to give a brief acceptance speech. She'd prepared remarks, professional, gracious, safe. She changed her mind at the microphone. 2 years ago, I was convinced I had no value. Someone I trusted told me my dreams were impractical, my career was unnecessary, and my worth was measured by biological function I couldn't control. I believed him. I stopped designing. I stopped dreaming. I stopped being myself. The room was silent. You could hear her breathing through the microphone. Then I was humiliated publicly, and a stranger stepped in. Not to save me, I hate that narrative, but to witness. To say this is wrong when 200 people were content to watch and record. That witnessing gave me permission to remember I was worth more than what I'd accepted. She found Lucian in the audience. His eyes were locked on hers. I rebuilt my career alone, but I didn't rebuild my courage alone. I had someone who asked about my designs at 3 a.m, who challenged every excuse I made, who taught me that dignity isn't negotiable and worth isn't conditional, who showed me what partnership looks like when it's built on respect instead of control. She saw his hand tighten on the armrest, saw something flash across his face, pride mixed with pain. This award represents reclaimed dreams. It represents buildings that house families and serve communities, but mostly, it represents learning to trust my own voice again. So I want to thank the man who taught me not to shrink, even when the world wanted me smaller. Applause, standing ovation, cameras flashing. But all she saw was Lucian, still seated, hand gripping the armrest, his other hand trembling slightly against his thigh. The tremor was getting worse. After the ceremony, there was a reception, networking, congratulations. People who'd ignored her a year ago now wanted to talk about collaborations. She played the part, smiled, exchanged business cards, made small talk about sustainable design and future projects, but she kept looking for Lucian. He was standing by the windows, alone, staring at the city lights. His hand was in his pocket, hiding the tremor, she realized. She excused herself from a conversation with a potential client and walked over. "You left before I could thank you properly." He turned, smiled. But it didn't reach his eyes. "You don't need to thank me. You did the work." "I needed the push. You needed permission to remember you were capable. That's different." Silence. Comfortable, but charged. All the things unsaid creating pressure between them. "Lucian. Elara, I need to tell you something." Her heart stopped, because that tone, that expression, that was the voice of someone about to destroy something beautiful. "I love you." That wasn't what she expected. "I've loved you since you took my hand and walked out of that building. Maybe before. Maybe the moment I saw you standing there holding yourself together while everything collapsed. And I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't. Because I'm..." His hand came out of his pocket, trembling, visibly, uncontrollably. "I'm disappearing." He told her everything. The diagnosis, the prognosis, the timeline, the symptoms that were already starting. Hand tremors, migraines, moments where his brain misfired and he lost words or forgot where he was. "I have maybe a year before it gets significantly worse. 5 years before I won't recognize you anymore. 10 years before I'm completely gone, even though I'm still breathing." She stood there, processing. All the times he'd pulled away making sense. All the future conversations he'd avoided clicking into place. "You let me fall in love with you knowing you were disappearing." "I didn't mean to. I tried not to, and I told myself I was just helping, just supporting, just being a friend. But I failed. I fell in love with you, and I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry because you deserve someone with a future, and I can only offer you a countdown. The anger hit her suddenly, violently. You don't get to decide what I deserve. You don't get to protect me from choices by hiding the truth. You let me fall in love with a version of reality that wasn't complete. I know. I stood on a stage and thanked you publicly, and you sat there knowing you'd been lying to me. I wasn't lying. I just wasn't telling you everything. That's the same thing. Her voice echoed through the empty reception area. Everyone else had left. Just them. Just this moment. Just the truth finally bleeding through. Tears were falling. She didn't remember when they started. I thought I was rebuilding with someone who trusted me, who saw me as an equal. But you were treating me like something fragile that couldn't handle reality. That's not, yes, it is. You decided I couldn't handle your truth, so you kept it from me. Just like Damien decided I couldn't handle my own career, so he convinced me to quit. Different motivations, same pattern. Men deciding what I can handle and making choices for me without my input. That landed. She saw it land. You saw him realize she was right. You're right. I know I'm right. I should have told you. Yes, you should have. Silence, broken only by her ragged breathing and the hum of the building's ventilation system. I didn't want to disappear alone. His voice cracked. Actually cracked, and something in her chest broke with it, because that honesty, that raw, vulnerable, devastating honesty, that was what she needed. Not protection, not careful omissions, truth. I need time. I understand. I need to process this, alone, without you trying to manage my reactions or spare my feelings. Okay. Don't text me, don't show up, don't send your security to make sure I'm safe. I need actual space. Whatever you need. She left, walked out of the building, got in her car, drove to her property, the mixed-use building with her name on the deed, went upstairs to her apartment, locked the door, and finally let herself fall apart. Rage and grief are terrible roommates. Rage wanted to scream at him for lying. Grief wanted to mourn what she was losing before she'd even fully had it. She cycled through both for days, called her therapist, emergency session, then regular sessions. 3 times a week because processing betrayal and terminal diagnosis and falling in love and choosing agency all at once requires professional support. Her therapist asked good questions, hard questions. Oh, what are you actually angry about? He lied. Did he lie or did he omit? What's the difference? One is actively creating false reality. The other is selectively sharing truth. Both are problematic, but the motivation matters. He said he didn't want to disappear alone. And how does that make you feel? Angry that he put that on me. But also, understood? Because I didn't want to rebuild alone either. We were both using each other as witnesses to our survival. Is that wrong? I don't know, is it? What would it mean if you chose to stay? That question sat with her. Heavy, complicated. What would it mean? It would mean choosing someone knowing the ending. Knowing love would require watching him fade. Knowing partnership would become caretaking. Knowing he'd forget her eventually, even though she'd never forget him. It would mean building a life with an expiration date. But hadn't she already survived something ending badly? Hadn't she already rebuilt from rubble? What's another ending if this one came with actual love in the middle? 3 weeks of silence. She went to therapy. She worked on projects. She checked off goals from her reclaim list. She existed without him. It hurt. God, it hurt. Like phantom pain from a limb you're not sure you want amputated. But she needed to know she could survive without him. Because choosing to stay had to be choice, not dependency. On day 22, she showed up at his apartment. He looked terrible, hollow, like he'd been surviving on coffee and regret. His hair was longer, stubble on his jaw. He wasn't sleeping. She could see it in his eyes. Elara, I refuse to build another life around fear. He stared at her. I'm angry at you. I'm still processing. I might be angry at you for months, but I'm also in love with you, and I'm choosing you. Not because you helped me, not because I'm grateful, but because loving you, even with a countdown, feels more real than anything I had with Damien. You don't have to... Stop. Stop telling me what I don't have to do. I'm telling you what I choose to do. I choose you. I choose us. I choose building something beautiful even if I know it won't last forever. Because nothing lasts forever. Everyone dies eventually. Your timeline is just more specific. He laughed, broken, relieved, nearly collapsed. You're sure? I'm terrified, but yes. Oh, I'm sure. She stepped forward. He pulled her close. They stood there holding each other like survivors of separate shipwrecks who'd found the same piece of debris. We do this honestly, she said against his chest. No more omissions, no more protecting me from reality. You tell me everything. Symptoms, fears, bad days, all of it. Okay. And I stay because I want to, not because I feel obligated, not because you saved me. Because I love you, and choosing you feels like the most powerful thing I can do. Okay. They built something together. Not a fairy tale, not a tragedy, something more honest. They launched her firm together, properly launched. She expanded from residential to commercial projects. He consulted on financial strategy. They became partners in the real sense, equal, collaborative, building something that would outlast both of them. They bought the cliffside house together, small, modern, lots of windows, close to the ocean because Lucian loved the sound of waves and Elara loved the light. They hosted small gatherings, friends, colleagues, her old classmates who'd come back into her life, his sister, the one who'd given up medical school, who looked at Elara with something like hope and said, I'm proud of you for not making my mistakes. They recorded videos, Lucien telling stories about his life, his childhood, his business ventures, his regrets, his proudest moments. All of it documented, so that when his memory started failing, he could watch himself and remember who he was. They documented their life together too. Photos, notes, inside jokes written down so she could tell him later when he forgot. This wasn't romantic. It was strategic, intentional preparation for loss. But it was also love. Because love isn't just the good parts. It's choosing to show up knowing things will hurt. She proposed, not him, her. They were at the cliffside house, sunset, ocean doing its endless rhythm against rocks. I won't lose you without making you mine first. She had a ring, simple, titanium, strong, unbreakable. Marry me, not because we have time, because we don't. Marry me because I choose you and I want legal and emotional and every other kind of binding that says, this person matters to me. He cried. Actually cried. Big, shoulder-shaking sobs that he'd been holding back for months. Yes. Courthouse wedding. Immediate family only. And her parents, who'd been skeptical until they met him and saw how he looked at their daughter, his sister, a few friends, no media, no cameras, no performance. Just two people making promises knowing one of them wouldn't remember making them eventually. The vows were honest. I promise to love you while you're here and honor you when you're not. I promise to remember you even when I can't remember myself. They signed papers, kissed, became legally bound, Mr. and Mrs. Vale. She kept Monroe professionally, but legally she was his, and he was hers, for however long they had. The decline started subtly. He'd forget what he was saying mid-sentence. Small gaps, recoverable. Then he'd forget meeting someone he'd met the day before, more concerning. Then he forgot why they were at the grocery store, stood there holding a cart looking confused and frightened. "We're getting ingredients for dinner," she said calmly. "Pasta, remember? You were going to make that thing with the roasted vegetables." Recognition flickered back. Right, pasta. But she saw the fear underneath, the awareness that he was losing pieces of himself. The hand tremors got worse. He dropped things, broke glasses, spilled coffee, apologized constantly until she told him to stop. "It's the disease, not you. Stop apologizing for being sick." Migraines put him in bed for days. Dark room, ice packs, medication that barely helped. She'd sit with him, reading aloud. Sometimes he'd listen. Sometimes he'd just squeeze her hand to acknowledge she was there. They hired help, part-time caregiver for when she was at work, someone to make sure he didn't wander or hurt himself during the bad days. He hated it. Hated needing supervision like a child, but he accepted it because refusing help meant risking her safety, and he loved her too much for pride. One evening, he looked at her, really looked, like seeing her for the first time. "When you're the woman from the rooftop." Her heart stopped, because that's how he remembered her now, not as his wife, not as Elara, but as the woman from the rooftop, the woman he'd helped, the beginning of their story. "Yes," she whispered, "I'm the woman from the rooftop." He smiled, peaceful, like he'd solved a puzzle. Then his eyes closed. He fell asleep. She sat there watching him breathe, knowing he'd wake up having forgotten this conversation, possibly having forgotten her entirely. But right now, in this moment, he'd remembered the rooftop, remembered stepping in, remembered the beginning. Maybe that's enough. Years pass. The disease progresses exactly as predicted, sometimes slower, sometimes faster, always cruel. He lives in assisted care now, specialized facility for neurological conditions, beautiful place, gardens, art therapy, music, everything designed to preserve dignity even as the mind deteriorates. She visits daily, even when he doesn't recognize her. And especially when he doesn't recognize her, some days he knows her name. Those are good days. She brings his favorite foods. They eat together. She tells him about the firm, how it's expanded, how they're building sustainable housing in 3 cities now, how his financial planning made it all possible. Some days he doesn't know her but senses she's important. Those days he calls her friend, and they talk about neutral topics. She doesn't correct him, doesn't force recognition, just exists with him wherever he is. Some days he doesn't acknowledge her at all, stares out windows, lost in whatever fragments of memory remain. She sits with him anyway, holds his hand, reads him the stories he told in the videos they made. The staff knows her. Mrs. Vale, who never misses a day, who brings fresh flowers weekly, who updates his room with photos from their life together, even though he can't identify the people in them anymore. The firm is thriving. Monroe Vale Design Studio. Both names on the door because partnership means something even when only one partner remains functional. She's a billionaire now, not through inheritance, through work, through the shares he transferred to her before he lost the capacity to make financial decisions, through successful projects and smart investments and building something that matters. She could retire. She's 43, financially secure for multiple lifetimes, could travel, could do anything. She works harder. Because stopping would mean acknowledging he's gone even though he's still breathing, and she's not ready for that acknowledgement. She funds scholarships, full rides for women leaving abusive relationships, education, housing, therapy, job placement, everything needed to rebuild from zero. The foundation is named after him, the Vale Foundation for Reclaimed Futures. At the launch event, she gives a speech. This foundation honors a man who stepped in when I was humiliated and stayed present while I rebuilt, who taught me that dignity is non-negotiable and worth is inherent, who loved me enough to tell me hard truths and trust me to handle them, even when he got that timing wrong. She pauses, breathes. He's alive, but he's fading. Degenerative neurological disease is taking him piece by piece. Some days he knows my name. Most days he doesn't. But I visit anyway, because that's love. Not the fairy tale version, the real version. The version that stays when staying hurts. He stepped in when I was being destroyed publicly. I stay now that he's disappearing privately. Both actions come from the same place, refusing to let someone you care about suffer alone. The audience is crying. She's not. She's done crying. Now she just exists in the space between grief and purpose. If this foundation helps even one person reclaim their future the way he helped me reclaim mine, then his legacy lives. Not in his memory, that's fading, in action, in impact, in proving that one person stepping in can change everything. 10 years after the rooftop, Lucian is 51, she's 45. He doesn't know her anymore, hasn't for 2 years. But she still visits, still holds his hand, still tells him stories about people he doesn't remember, including himself. Today she brought the video they made, early days, when he was just starting to forget small things. And she plays it on the tablet, his face appears, younger, sharper, still himself. If you're watching this, it means I'm not fully here anymore. I want you to know that I loved being here. I loved building Veil Investments. I loved helping people see their potential. I loved my sister, even when she made choices I couldn't understand. I loved proving that money could be used for more than ego. Video Lucian pauses, smiles. Most of all, I loved Elara, and the woman from the rooftop who taught me that saving someone isn't weakness, and being saved isn't shame. We built something beautiful. I'm sorry I won't remember it, but I'm grateful I got to live it. Present Lucian watches the screen, no recognition in his eyes, but he's calm, peaceful. She turns off the video. "That was you," she says softly. "You were brilliant and kind and difficult and loving. You changed my life. And even though you don't remember, I remember enough for both of us." He looks at her, doesn't speak, but his hand squeezes hers. Maybe he doesn't know who she is, but maybe he knows she matters. Maybe that's enough. Would you choose love knowing time would take it away piece by piece? Would you build something beautiful knowing it would end badly? Would you stay when the person you love forgets your name? Or would you protect yourself and walk away before it hurts? I can't answer that for you. But I can tell you what Elara chose. She chose love anyway, not because it was easy, because it was real, not because it lasted forever, because it mattered now, not because he saved her, because they saved each other from living half-lives built on fear. She chose to stay when he was fading. He chose to step in when she was falling. That's the story. Not a fairy tale, not a tragedy, just two people refusing to let fear win. If this story moved you, and I want you to think about who in your life needs someone to step in, who needs witnessing, who needs someone to say this is wrong when everyone else is watching silently. Be that person. And if you need someone to step in, please ask for help. Your dignity is non-negotiable. Your worth is not conditional. Your dreams are not impractical. The world will try to make you smaller. Build something bigger. The world will try to make you forget your value. Remember anyway. And the world will try to convince you that love with limits isn't worth the pain. Choose it anyway. Because Elara did. And she built an empire. And she loved a man who forgot her name. And she showed up every single day, even when showing up destroyed her. That's strength. That's power. That's what it looks like when you refuse to let cruelty or disease or time or fear dictate your choices. Subscribe if you want more stories that challenge what you think strength really is. Because strength isn't avoiding pain. Strength is choosing meaning even when meaning comes with expiration dates. Strength is loving someone on a rooftop and staying with them in assisted care. Strength is building dreams from ashes and turning humiliation into empire. Strength is Elara Monroe Vale, 45 years old, visiting her husband daily even though he doesn't remember marrying her. That's the story. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me if you think she was brave or foolish. Tell me if you think dignity should ever be negotiated. And then tell me who you're going to step in for today. Because this story is about refusing to be a bystander in your own life. And I desperately hope that if you ever find yourself on a rooftop being humiliated, someone steps in. And if you see someone on that rooftop, be the person who steps in. Don't just watch. Don't just record. Act like Lucian did, like Elara learned to do. Act. Because dignity should never be negotiated. And love, real love, chooses to stay even when staying is the hardest thing you'll ever do. That's the ending. That's the truth. That's what happens when you refuse to let the world make you smaller. You build something that outlasts the pain, even when the pain outlasts the person.